Milkbasket could have been sold for a lot more than it did.
Would have never been sold.
First word that comes to mind when I say the word unicorn. The first word that comes to mind when I say sorted. Money. Entrepreneurship. I'm actually scared to ask this one. Kalari. Our guest today is Anant Goel. Anant previously founded Milkbasket, which was one of India's fastest growing hyperlocal plays. We're here today to speak with Anant about his new venture called Sorted. We also pick his brain with respect to everything happening in the venture capital ecosystem, the corporate governance issues with startups, and a lot more. Enjoy this brand new episode of First Unicorn Chats. Anant, welcome to First Unicorn Chats. Thank you for being here. How has life been treating you in this new world?
It's a sinusoidal curve. It goes ups and downs. Depending on the day and the type of the business is like that.
Right.
So holidays affect your business, and weather affects your business, and perishability affect your business.
Let's talk about the ops first, right? From the beginning. I think the thing that you're most known for, at least at this point, right, was how you built Milkbasket.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the time जो आपने शुरू करी थी, it was a fairly competitive space, right? There was Big Basket and all of the other guys who were there in that space. So how did you kind of come up with that concept? And could you walk us through the early days of Milkbasket?
Yeah, but means we don't have that much time today. So, but let's think about it. See, I think calling it a competitive space would be underplaying that effect. So I think if I look at 2014, 15, you would be looking at maybe 10 to 20 grocery startups in every city of India, trying to figure out how to sell more atta, more dal, more chini. And if you build on that, what you will see is that everybody is looking at this stock-up behavior of customers, that people buy bulk in the first 5 days of the month. And that's true. 40% of sales of any big player, any retail shop, big format happens in those 5 days. And there was an initial one big problem, I think, that we identified very early on, is that it's not about acquiring your first customer, it's about getting a repeat sale. And I think that was the seed for Milkbasket being Milkbasket, to create a product portfolio, so to say, where you do not have to worry about repeat, and you can get away with acquiring a customer once. And I think Milk played that role for us. Milk was our entry into the door. And then the whole idea was, how do we sell? So the first logo of Milkbasket was Milk plus Basket. Actually, there was a plus sign in between,
right,
which we removed over a period of time.
Right. No, very interesting. And distribution, like everyone knows, in India, it's a difficult play, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was like basically the early days of actually setting up the network, right? Were there some hacks that you guys were looking at, or basically figuring out कि अभी कहाँ पे there are gaps in the chain, right? To basically bring that efficiency from a delivery perspective, because distribution was the main play here.
Right. And I think if you look at all the traditional grocery delivery models, online models, distribution was the biggest cost also. Why they were not able to make money and still not able to make money. Because what sits as a rental cost on your P&L or your balance sheet in a traditional retail sits as a delivery cost, and it's a significant 2-digit number. And the way we looked at it was that there are two supply chains which are happening, and that was our starting point. One is that milk is delivered every day. It's not a very high value product, but somehow that person is able to make money. Second, newspapers are getting delivered. Again, it's not a very high value product, but for whatever reason that supply chain is working. We started calling it what we call ghost delivery. And it's called a graveyard shift. That means you consolidate the news all day, you publish the newspaper at midnight, and you deliver it before 6 o'clock in the morning. If you think about it, Milkbasket was a replica of a newspaper supply chain. Take orders from customers throughout the day, consolidate them in the night, and deliver it to before morning. And what we found is that one is the warehousing and how to always optimize for warehousing, but the last mile, how do you bring more volume to lesser runs? So rather than saying we are giving you a slot, rather than saying we are giving you a 60 minute was very popular then, by the way. when we started, and within 6 to 8
10 मिनट में नहीं कर पाया आप.
Sorry,
10 मिनट में नहीं कर पाया.
10 minute. Okay, that's a topic we don't want to get into right now. It's not. I think. See, when I started Milkbasket, it was 2015, right? If you think about, I was 37, 38 at that point of time. It's not about doing the fancy thing. It's about doing the long-term thing.
Right.
It's about looking at profitability from day one and having that confidence. Because after spending 5 years on a business that doesn't go anywhere, is not making money, where would you end up? You're not 20-year-old or 25-year-old. So I think I am one of those conservative founders where we spend more time thinking about it and then get into the execution on a faster mode, but without saying that, oh, yeah, let's try this, let's pivot this, let's pivot this.
Right.
Like the multiple grocery startups without naming, whom we call the pivot king. Like every 6 months, there is a new model coming up. There's cash flow coming in and investor money coming in, and you're just trying to figure out.
Right.
We tried not to do that. Or I have tried not to do that with the last startup. With this startup, the whole idea is before you scale, before you make a fancy name for yourself, just get your basics right. Have that confidence to say that, okay, this is something you can really crack. And cracking is not about acquiring customer, coming to the 10-minute delivery. It's about making money.
Right.
The business objective has to make money. That's the only way you can give sustained shareholder value, either to your early investors, your long-term investors, or in the public market. So,
yeah,
different read.
I think
Old dinosaur, people have called me all the things. So
no, but it is also a function of the prevalent saying, right, which is move fast and break things. That lines up really well with all the growth at all cost mentality when the liquidity is very easily available. Break things, right? But the other side of the coin is that, hey, instead of move fast and break things, why don't you stop for a bit and research before breaking things, right? Because that is the mindset which comes with quote unquote dinosaur.
And that's something you should do before you take your first check. Why are you doing it after taking somebody else's money?
True. I think
means you can have 3 hypotheses. Like when I started Sorted a year back, we said that, we have done fruits and vegetables for 6-7 years now in a Milkbasket model and tried to solve for it. We have not been able to solve it. Nobody in the ecosystem has been able to solve it. But we have 3 hypotheses, and either of these hypotheses has to work. And if they are good, and yes, we used investors' money to prove those hypotheses. They knew that upfront that, hey, we don't know what model we are going to do, but we are solving for one thing. Right? And then it's called hypothesis. In hypothesis, you don't go to multiple cities. You don't do multiple launches. You go one by one. It's more like bigger pilots, right? And each pilot is something that you are watching very closely, doing very closely, looking at what was the hypothesis, where are you proving it.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like every corporate is known for doing these pilots. And as a startup, I think I'm lucky one possibly to be able to do those pilots. Right. But what happened with those, grow fast, fail fast mentality or thought processes, you are thinking you have figured it out, and you go to 5 cities and you spend $10 million. And then you say, oops, it doesn't work. Let me do another model, and now let me spread to another 10 cities.
Right.
I don't think that's sensible even from a fast growth perspective.
Very true. Because it's a hypothesis, right? Hypothesis first has to be validated
at a small level,
or level, right? You can't be in the middle and then move on to other city.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I think at this point, the question becomes, you've come up with another startup now. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But you've gone from one competitive space to another, I would say competitive and tough in this case, right? Because there is perishability also involved. There is cold chain involved. Talk to us about Sorted. What is the problem you guys are looking to solve here?
Sure. So I would first like to talk about the competitiveness. I think we look at it as a saturated space. I would say not a competitive space. In which, again, as grocery was in 2015-16, that multiple attempts have been done, but all the attempts have been same model, same thought process, and solving the same problem. As I said, the stock-up problem is being solved. Or a random problem, 90-minute delivery is being solved whether the customer need it or not, right? Or a 10-minute delivery is solved. We have mom and pop shops for that. And India is very unique when it comes to looking at the problem, identifying a problem, and no matter how many players are in a particular market, your biggest competition is actually the unorganized market. Especially when you look at something like when Uber comes in, or Uber came in, right? Or an Ola came in, their competition was the biggest unorganized market of taxi drivers and these small cab drivers and autos, right? The rate of employment in India and the cost of doing business for them is so low. Like the same guy that I hire to do the same work versus organized versus unorganized, I will be paying 40% extra cost for that. Right? So the same guy his take home would be same, but then, all the PF and the ESIs, and because I have to use a third party vendor and I have to pay a fees for that, and then I have to deal with labor laws, the compliances that come with us, the GST that we have to pay, like how many people in the unorganized economy pay GST?
Right.
So all these things make organized business become very difficult. So to me, the competition is not the big conglomerates or the big startups. You have to really think that whom are you replacing or competing with? Can your business model be more efficient than that? And if your business model is more efficient than that, then nothing can stop you.
Very interesting.
So yeah, coming to Sorted, I think you can call it a competitive industry. I call it a huge TAM, chaotic, unorganized. 95 to 98% of consumption of any city, any big city, is still happening through what we call mom and pop shops, right? Very few decimal percentages would go to online. A respectable 3 to 4% will go to organized retail, the big format retail.
Right.
But anywhere between 90 to 95, depending on the city, tier ones, all the tier ones and aspiring tier ones. And then the moment you go into tier 2, tier 3, then people know someone who has a farm and people have their own farms and people are growing, and all those things come that it's not even a problem. It's something that if you think about how milk industry was before Amul came in, that the moment you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities or villages, people have their own cows and buffaloes, or they are sourcing from someone that they know.
Right.
But people in tier 1 would face the real problem. And if you look at it, the Amul's penetration in tier 1 versus Amul's penetration in tier 2, tier 3, it reduces drastically. Because even a city like Gurgaon, 25 to 30% of milk consumption is still loose, which comes directly from Dudwala. Right? City like Gurgaon. So the moment you go to tier 2, tier 3, it becomes. So if you are organizing something, you need to have big enough TAM. The problem is big, so that means you can solve and you can make a lot of money. And third thing, that great thing is that there could be multi-billion-dollar companies in that space.
Right.
Because you're not going to saturate your TAM. One of the big problem that Indians are facing right now, and with this liquidity crunch which is coming to the face, is there's so many startups where TAM is being saturated.
Low TAM investments.
Yeah, it looks very big, but again, 30 million credit cards.
Correct.
A percentage of that are actually using your product at a particular frequency. And the moment you put all these percentage factors, your TAM shrinks down to a few 100,000,
right,
as compared to 1.2 billion that you started with.
Correct. I think Bloom has a report this time called the Indus Valley Report or something, right? Which basically talks about how most of the population is down there, and there's a India 1 which is basically probably 100 million people, accounting for 1.5 trillion or something in terms of GDP. And there's one India 1A, right? So most of the people end up actually solving for 1A and then claiming that they're solving for the entire market. Right. And I think it was Nitin Kamath also had put out a post recently saying that the problems that are happening in the VC space right now is because a lot of investments actually went into low TAM areas. Right? And then the competitive pressures creeped in, not really backing anybody who did, who had corporate governance issues. But it was a reason. Right. So do you probably stand by that as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something very, very basic. See, if you want to create, I look at businesses as two things. We are in startup world, so we should think about startup. The second is what we call a lifestyle business. So many lifestyle businesses can be created. where decent revenue, decent margin can be created. But you will not be able to give a venture capitalist, which is high risk capital, high return capital, an exit in the next 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years. Yes, it can become self-sustainable businesses. And as a proprietor or as a partner, India is famous for, textile industry, if you look at it, or food industry, small manufacturers looking in a particular area, selling their product, making a good money, means they make crores.
Right.
And it's a family business. And it's great for a great lifestyle. But you will not be able to return a third party, especially in an industry where they know the rate of the startups anyways are going to fail.
Right.
One is going to return the money. And then you have to bet on that, the 10th one, which gives you a 20x return to compensate for the entire fund.
Right.
Right. So TAM, and I would add one more thing. I think 2 things are very important. TAM, I should correct myself. 3 things have become very important. So first is TAM. Second, I would call unit economics. Very, very solid. People have been running industries or companies or startups for 5 years, and their core product which they launched has not attained the basic unit economics that they always promised. Means there has to be a timeline of 1 quarter, maybe 2 quarters, get a unit economics on the paper, actually prove it, show it. Then you have that confidence for yourself also that you can sleep in the night, and that you can give the confidence to customers, investors also, that you can grow.
Right.
And third, which is not a very recent phenomena, and again, uncommon with the dinosaurs, more common with, is the entire ethics. Means whom are we lying to? Right? I thought we are playing with our career, we are playing with our life, and it's not a short-term thing. We need means ethics, fudging numbers, inflating numbers, or doing anything around that. I understand it's very difficult to do compliance in India. Means I was selling milk and groceries for 9 months or 10 months before somebody told me you need an FSSAI license.
How's that true?
Yeah, that's a real truth. And then we applied for it and we paid penalty. Yeah, but it was not something to say that, okay, I'm selling something and I'm reporting something. It's like I'm selling, but I did not know that for selling you need. I thought manufacturing you need. I'm not manufacturing anything. It's Amul milk. It has an FSSAI number.
Right.
Why should I, as a retailer, I had no idea. To me, I'm opening a shop. It's an online shop and I'm selling.
Right.
But then I was told, no, you need FSSAI. Not just for your warehouse. You need FSSAI for each vehicle that is taking stuff.
Wow.
And now how do you take FSSAI? Then we figured out how to do that compliance or how to manage.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, not being truthful to yourself and getting on that entire ethics or integrity is just plain wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very critical. It never used to be such a problem, but I guess with growth, everything comes.
Right. And you and I had this conversation some time back also, right? About frauds offline. And you were like, yeah, it is so childish. You can't even look that much into the future, that you're playing with yourself at the end of the day.
It's a very short-term view.
Correct.
Because it will catch up with you. You know that. And I don't know. Again, it's a dinosaur property, but I treat my startup as a child. Right? And I don't imagine that I'll give steroids to my child in terms of short-term benefit and having a long-term loss.
Right. That's a very good analogy. Yeah.
Right? So I would take care of them and make sure that what they're eating is healthy and it's as good as that.
Right.
And you can compare it with the sports world that, okay, some people do that. And then there are tests and which we call audits in our world, which pick them up and then they're done for life. So means it's not worth taking the risk. It's to say that, you know what, we thought this was our hypothesis. We thought this is the model. We thought this would work, but it's not working. It's a high-risk capital. Venture capitalists understand it. And as a founder, you will emerge stronger, smarter, and possibly more convincing.
Right.
To say that, hey, I want to do something different. And I know so many startup founders who have done that.
What would you say to founders they've got caught on the wrong side of things, and their excuse, quote unquote, is that too much pressure from VCs, right? Because everybody's being villainized in this market right now, right? Because VCs are losing money, which means LPs are losing money, right? and there's a lot of finger pointing going on, right? So what is your stance, right? Because you've managed both those kind of relationships, right? As an angel investor, as a as a founder yourself with VCs. So what would you say to somebody who's saying that बहुत pressure है?
I think, okay, see, let's look at where does the pressure comes from. Pressure comes from that you have presented in Excel. And as somebody just recently told me, more fiction is written on Excel than in words. But you have presented an Excel based on certain understanding of how the unit economics will play, what would be the cost of customer acquisition, how much would be my ops cost, blah, blah, blah. Performance related to that Excel is the pressure that a VC gives you. But nobody asks you to put an Excel which is unrealistic.
Correct.
You do that because that's where you are saying that, okay, you will get investment versus the other one. And possibly I have seen that happening with me. That a VC has not invested in me because my competitor, during Milkbasket days, there's so many competitors that came and replicated the model. And they said that we can grow much faster, we can give you better revenue. And VCs put in money there. Great VCs, big VCs have put in money there as compared to putting money in us. But just because you did that and you won the race or you got that capital, you, again, as we say, it's not that, okay, you have to do it once and then you're going to a different country.
Right.
It comes back after 6 months or 9 months. You call it pressure.
Right.
I would not call it pressure. I would call it, it's like you projected something, you did something, you have to do that. And or in 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, if you realize that you're not getting there, let's just get back to the VCs and say, hey, this is what we thought, but this is what the ground reality is. And let's redo it. The problem is then, based on that, they will not get the funding. And I think that's right. It's okay not to get the next round of funding.
Very interesting. You've been someone who's had, an interesting relationships with venture capital.
Very one. Deep ones.
Let's call them love-hate relationships. What is your suggestions to founders, right, in terms of building a relationship with a VC? Because there's a lot to gain also. You can get screwed over, but there's a lot to gain. So how does a person who's probably going to give away a chunk of his business to a VC think about that relationship? Not from a short-term perspective, but just say the way you've thought about it, right? From a longer-term viewpoint, given all your experiences.
I think, Raj, given all my experiences, I cannot advise on that.
Okay.
You think you are smart. You think you would be able to handle it when the time comes. The problems typically come like in any relationship, whether it's husband and wife, whether it's parents and kids, when there is adversity, right? There would be a lack of capital, or you're not displaying the growth that you have to, or you have screwed up something. And in those times of adversity, how at the end of the day, CVC is a human being, right? Can you really predict how a human would behave? It's very difficult. We are the most, unknown organism possibly that exists on Earth, or unpredictable, so to say. To saying and classifying VC as a venture capitalist who should behave in a certain manner, to me, is expecting your son to behave in a certain manner or expecting your wife to behave in a certain manner. See, you make that mark the moment I talk about wife, right? Because everybody knows, you just don't know. And there are things which will happen in their life. There are things which they are constrained about. It's not an excuse to behave unprofessionally. If somebody is behaving unprofessionally, no, it's not an excuse. But can you really predict it? And can I give an advice on how to manage it? No. So everybody to themselves, they judge the founder, you judge that person who's sitting, and then you play it. And at the end of the day, I think you have to leave it on luck on how it plays out.
Interesting.
So
this is a very evolved opinion. Have you arrived at this opinion about everything that happened and your relationship with certain VCs? Is it, because time has done its thing and you've had some time to reflect? Or was this your mindset even when it happened?
No, I don't think it was the mindset. It has evolved, but it has evolved to go back to that state of zero to say that it's a human being that you're dealing with. And those human decisions are irrational. I want to lose weight, but I eat samosa in the evening, right? This is called rational thinking, irrational behavior. We all behave irrationally. Being a student of behavioral economics and have practiced behavioral economics in my past life, the last job I had before I got into startups, people are just irrational. You can't do anything about it. Don't expect different results from the same creator. So they're people who have turned out to be extra supportive, extra helpful, that you thought that has no skin in the game or very little skin in the game and it's just another check. And the people who said that we are totally invested and we're going to help you here, we're going to help you there, just turn out to be like that bomb on Diwali that never goes off.
But very interesting, right? Because right now you made an analogy that your startup is like your baby, right? And this is a very, very evolved opinion. Do you meditate?
Do I meditate? No, I work. So no, I've not meditated. I used to.
Because the reason I asked this, right, is because on one side we spoke about, hey, how your startup is your baby, right? And there can be internal or external stakeholders, some of which you have control over, some of which you don't, right? Which are trying to impact that. In your case, that was a much bigger thing, right? So how do you kind of deal with that duality, right? On one side, you understand the person who is dealing with it is also a human being, but this is your baby, right? So as a founder who has to still operate, still grow, still kind of be in the thick of that, right? How do you kind of reduce the noise to make sure you're still operating at your optimum?
I think being a parent of 3 helps.
Okay.
I have 3 kids. My eldest being 10 now, 10 plus. I take it very seriously. You know, I'm not just saying that like this morning I was sitting with my ops team and I gave them the same example. I have given this example for the last 5 years ago. I realized that the way a child evolves, a startup evolves. And founders have to think like parents. For the first 6 months, 12 months, we are growing that startup, right? And then you bring in a play school. And then you bring in a school, formal school, where 2 teachers kick in.
Right.
And then a physics teacher comes in, then chemistry teacher comes in, then a tennis coach comes in. Right. And then sometimes we have problem with the school that we're sending our kid to, right? Some kid will bully, or their parents would do something, or the school policy is not right, that you're not, means you just don't take out your kid, right? You try to manage it.
Right.
So I think that's, people are going to have adverse things, and your with all the coaches that we have put together, means I say it as a founder, as a repeat founder, that at some point of time, my dream is to make the organization big enough that I am not capable to run it, which means I should hire a new CEO,
right,
and find a more capable person, or divide that business into subsidiaries or units to have CEOs to run that. Because as a parent, how long do you actually last when it comes to guiding your kid?
Right.
You say, okay, 18 years, they become an adult, and then somebody has to take over.
Correct.
And all the great people in history who have created these conglomerates, corporates, means even look at examples of the Tatas or the Birlas, they are great at it, right? Separating the units out, putting the new CEOs, the VPs, promoting them to CEOs of TCS was born like that.
Correct.
FC Kohli was just another senior VP in the Tata Group, right? Who took the lead on TCS and took it to where it was. I'm an ex-TCS.
Okay.
No. Yeah, but so if that is true, then founders are dispensable, all the senior team is dispensable, and so are investors. They're all people who have come in at different points of time in the life of the startup to influence the startup, hopefully in a better way.
Right.
And that's the objective, that as a parent, we have to sort of secure and guard. The rest of it would be luck, would be growth, would be market dynamics, and things happen.
Yeah, we're having this conversation with another founder, and he had kind of said the same thing, right? Ki if I'm able to replicate myself, the things which I'm doing every day at different functions, right? That's what ends up making a bigger organization, right? Because it's not just that you are the only one who can solve it. If that is the problem, bade nahi hoge, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to replicate that organization. And then over time, that's what's happened with the biggest business houses in India, right? They might not be 100% of the founder, but they might be 80%. That's okay. You move and move.
I have a slightly different take. When I sit with my core team or my leadership team, first, the thought process is always that if this group cannot solve this problem, then this problem cannot be solved, or we are missing someone in the group, right? So it could be either of the two. If it's missing, it's my problem. I should have that person onboarded. Second, I should always hire a person who's smarter at me for the function that person is handling. Should be better. Because if I am better than that person was a wrong hire. Right? So I'm creating an organization. I should hire a head of ops who has done 50 tons of volume already in some other avatar or some other startup or some other industry, who knows how to manage 2,000 people of blue-collar employees rather than me doing it. Right? I am not an expert in that, so I have to hire experts. So we all have shared knowledge. And as a CEO and founder, I think one of the very important roles that you have to play is you cannot be in the business all the time. You have to be on the business.
Right.
Because and I think that comes from maybe my training also. I've been a management consultant for 10 years before I went into the startup world. So consultants bring this uncanny thought process of I don't know anything, but I know about everything. And you sit on the business and put a lot of common sense. Because common sense is uncommon, right? The most uncommon thing is that. And you sit on top and then you just see how the parts are moving and to say, okay, why is this guy going like this? Then there is a straight line.
Right.
What's the problem with the straight line? Maybe I can just move two things apart. If you are moving that path, you cannot figure it out. So very frequently you have to be on the business. You can't just be in the business.
Right.
And because your department heads, your functional heads, your core team does not have that perspective.
Oh, very interesting. I'm going to move on to the last segment, right? Which is a couple of pop quiz questions for you. This is going to be interesting. Second, yeah? Okay. Simply, you have to agree or disagree with the following statements. Okay? We will see a lot more frauds emerge in the startup ecosystem in the next 12 months.
Agree.
Business models based on 10-minute deliveries are unsustainable.
Agree. In India.
Okay. Startup funding will bounce back only post-2024 election.
Can't say.
Milkbasket could have been sold for a lot more than it did.
Would have never been sold.
Okay. When DC will revolutionise the Indian e-commerce market?
Some categories, maybe. It's not an agree-disagree, boss. You're asking too much diplomatic questions. Going from government to conglomerates to everything. No. It's not good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one. Sorted will surpass Milkbasket's success.
By multiple times.
See, I gave you a softball. All right. Last section, right? First word that comes to mind when I say the word unicorn.
Oh, Apple, Google.
Okay. The first word that comes to mind when I say sorted.
Fresh.
Money.
Good life.
Entrepreneurship.
Fun.
I'm actually scared to ask this one. Kalari.
No commits.
Yes, that's what I knew. Anant, this was a fun conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Next time, hopefully, we'll have a deeper conversation on one of these topics as well.
Sure. Thank you so much. A pleasure.
3 things we learned from our conversation with Anant today. Number 1, in order to build a big business, you have to be on the business rather than in the business. What that means is you have to know when to dive deeper into operations and when to have a bird's eye view of your business. Number 2, rather than move fast and break things, you're better off slowing down and testing your hypothesis. Number 3, you may think that your market in India would be 1 billion people, but more often than not, it may be as small as 10 million. If you're building a startup today, dig deeper into understanding your real addressable market. This is Raj Snehil Juneja. For more such insightful content, like, share, and subscribe.